try to get me to use. Oh.
Perfect. Well, I have the amazing, great pleasure to have Ryan Donnell Smith with me here today, and he's going to unlock the secret of 181. But before we dive into this, thank you, Ryan, for taking the time to do this today. I know a lot of our students at UCLA are dying to hear what you have to say. You've done amazing work. Obviously, I looked at your track record, which is fantastic, especially in the short amount of time that you put it all together. It's fascinating how many movies you made in such a short amount of time, and they're all big movies that we all have seen and heard of. So very impressed.
Well, thank you so much.
And you have something that you do that's very unique. So before we dive into it, the question I always ask people is, why on earth are you working in the entertainment industry? Or better said, what inspired you to work in the entertainment industry?
I ask myself that every day. Oh, no, I had a passion from a young age for the arts, and growing up, kind of balanced school education and then arts and athletics, and really was passionate about all of them. And my journey was a little bit unique in that I went to college for sports medicine. I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon all throughout school. And but when I was very young, I was 15 years old, I had the opportunity of working for, first volunteering because I couldn't have a job, but then when I turned 16 and could get a job, working for a casting director in Nashville, Tennessee, where I grew up. And so what we had there were kind of a lot of commercials, a lot of music videos, live television, award shows. And for 7 years, all through high school and college, I was able to work for Regina Moore, an amazing casting director. And I really cut my teeth on all things production through meeting Regina, and then slowly going from our office and the casting office, and then immersing on set, going on as a talent coordinator, learning the nuts and bolts of production. And after my 5th year in school, I was about to take the MCAT and step into medical school. But I really, one of the physicians and one of my mentors, and I had a conversation, and I was producing at the time, and my education through the nuts and bolts of being on set year after year really created a career for me, and I fell in love with it. And I was so passionate that I made the decision, this is the right move, is to pursue my dream in entertainment versus continuing on into medical school. And I've been very lucky and fortunate, to continue that journey through many iterations of life, many different companies and cities, and now finally have landed, in the feature film world here in Los Angeles.
Very impressed. I mean, it's not every day I hear someone moving from the medical field into the entertainment field, but you're doing good for people. So in that sense, it kind of levels out on that one.
Exactly.
More, less painful, I should say.
Yes, exactly.
So when you work on, these especially bigger movies, and I mean, any project really, were there some that kind of for you stood out, or where you had some memorable experiences that you can share with us?
Sure. No, I think, again, my journey, as I started a production company in Nashville, I went from, the very, very beginning of DSLR camera and $2,000, tiny shoots, all the way up through building that company a little bit bigger, work for hire, learning the nuts and bolts of production, and through doing that, kind of learning line producing, because when you're a small shop, you have to know what everything costs and you have to do it all yourself. And so each iteration of that was passionate for me. One of my very first films, in fact, the very first film I ever worked on, was a film called Some Freaks. And we were in Providence, Rhode Island, and went up and really kind of made the transition from work to hire into film. And so to me, as far as memories go, just the learning experience that I had on set was amazing. And it to me, I cherish those relationships, those memories. And then every movie, I tell people, in my opinion, each and every film is a startup company. And so I think I have a bit of an entrepreneurial heart, where we have to do all the things that you do in a startup company on each and every film. And so every single one has its own memories and its own journey and its own pain and its own successes and its own failures. And so, I cherish all of that. One thing I love is just the film family of a crew. We're a bit of a a crazy group of individuals that decide to commit a couple of months together, and do something impossible. And so the memories that you make in day-to-day challenges and fun and offset memories of dinners and catching up and getting to know people, for each and every film, I think that's a special moment. And then on the larger side, you catch yourself in some just absolute, starstruck moments of watching these unbelievable actors and actresses, and teams and creatives and DPs and directors and everyone do what they do so well. There's oftentimes you just sit starstruck. And we had a film down in at our studio in Georgia last year, called Sam and Kate. And there was a moment where we were in the basement of our office. We have a bar diner set there. And we had the opportunity of Dustin Hoffman and Sissy Spacek doing a scene together. And we'd let them, it was two, later in life lovers who have lived their life. They're both widowed, and they're going basically on a first date. And we just let them improv. And to sit there in that room and watch, these two just iconic individuals, master of their crafts, improv together. Oh, it was, to me, that's probably one of the most special moments of the last few years. You just sit starstruck and say, man, this is an amazing industry we're in.
Oh yeah, this is, and that cast is of course stellar. And I mean, Dustin Hoffman, don't even get me started. I'm a huge fan. I would probably, my jaw would drop and it will never close when I would see him for sure. Now you put together or co-founded or founded a company called Streamline Global. What does that company do? What do you do? How did you get there? What was the thought on that?
Yeah, so again, I have a couple of different companies, and one is more production focused, more physical production, where I do a lot of development and creative producing and putting together projects. On the other side, is Streamline, which is focused on film financing. And so I met my business partner by doing what we do in our industry. I was pitching a project, and I was on that journey of a startup company in the very beginning of I need to raise money, and someone shared, hey, you need to meet, Emily, my business partner, you need to meet and talk to her about what they're doing with 181. And boy, fast forward 7 years now, we quickly hit it off, and I learned the genesis of the model they were putting together, and decided, hey, this is something I would love to be a part of. And at the time I was considering going in-house, with a studio potentially, and, just wondering what my next evolution would be. But there's something so special about independent production when you can put together and you can bring creative's vision to the screen. I think that it to me, scratches a creative itch of empowering creators to do something so special that it just, I don't find that at the same level on the other side, right? It's something so special in independent film. And this model with 181 is allowing us to do that every day. And so that's really what we've been focused on the past 5 years, is on the finance side, working and putting together these projects using tax equity investments as a benchmark to do so.
Well, let's talk about that then. 181, the big word. I have not figured this out. As you know, I'm a producer financier, but most of my money comes from outside of the United States. And I've heard about it, of course, but I don't think anyone really knows. And it sounds like you do know. So share the goods.
Yeah, so 181 was originally put into place because, and not that it's a bad thing, but it was happening in the US, is years ago. A lot of production was moving up to Canada, was going to UK, Australia, co-productions, to outside the US, because incentives and benefits in other places exceeded what we were able to do here in the United States. And so there was a lot of what I'll call runaway production, people leaving the country because either that's how you could get a film to strike price. And so it was originally put into place for that manner, because what it is it's a federal tax code. And I tell people what I love about it is so many things in the tax space of the world. I mean, US tax law is bigger than the Bible. It's crazy ridiculous to read. But the first thing I tell people, what's great about 181 is Google US IRS code 181 and read it, because they do a really good job of breaking down for us what exactly you can do with this code. And it's very specific. It is the fact that you can take an expense deduction against an investor's income. So I'm going to kind of lay this out and then I'll unpack it.
Please. Thank you, Ryan.
But you can take an expense deduction against your income. And by doing so, you are basically greenlighting or creating a film and or television or live theater project. It lays it out what qualifies. And by doing so, an investor gets a benefit of this expense deduction, which thus, reduces their AGI, reduces their taxable income for the year. So they get that benefit immediately. But the great thing is, every film that we greenlight is creating approximately 100 jobs, some many more, some a few less, but approximately 100 jobs. And oftentimes, the way the economic development commissions look at this is, let's say a gaffer on a film may make $65,000 or $70,000 throughout, the 12, 13 weeks of a film project. If that same person in a state in the United States were an electrician, their likely salary would be equivalent to that for the year, their annual salary. So $70,000, salary for an electrician for the year. The way that the US will look at that is, well, then basically we've created one full-time job in the US for 1 year. So by allowing a 181 and greenlighting a movie, we've allowed the US, the economy, to create 100 jobs, right? And provide salaries for 1 year through this structure. And so that's a bit of the genesis. It's been bipartisan throughout the years. It's appreciated, and it's been appreciated on both sides. And what it does is, again, it allows the investors to take an expense deduction of their income, and basically invest in a movie, thus greenlighting the film. And by doing so, you then get to create the project, and the investor gets a large tax benefit on their side.
Can they deduct the full investment? So if I would give you $500,000 as an investment, can I deduct $500,000 fully, or is it just a share?
You can take an expense deduction of the whole thing. And so, yeah, it's an amazing, incentive that the US has allowed us to have throughout the years, which really is exciting, because when we put that into practice within the film industry, we're able to provide investors, provide partners, people who want to produce and executive produce, a great incentive other than just profit motive. Now, there is profit motive, and there has to be profit motive. There's no tax benefit in the United States that is created that is allowed without profit motive. But each investor looks at the movies and says, yes, we believe in it as an investment, that we're going to make profit in perpetuity by doing so. And so, yes, they allow the entire, we call it the entire cost basis, to be deducted against your income. So if you put in $500 or $500,000 into the movie, you get to reduce your income, take an expense deduction against your income for that dollar for dollar for that amount. It's
amazing. Do I have to be working in the industry, or can I also be a dentist to do this?
Well, that gets into a little bit deeper. I think a couple of things. One, I'm a producer by trade. I'm not a tax attorney, and I'm an accountant.
Of course. I'm just asking in general, for qualification of these investors, I guess.
Absolutely. So the bottom line is, anyone can do it. Businesses and individuals can make a 181 investment. Now, the manner in which you treat that kind of gets a bit deeper than today, whether that becomes active and or passive income, how it's treated on the tax side, you have to go into that. But the bottom line is, yes, our team, we have many investors across many industries. And a lot of them are entertainment based already. Some of them are not. Some of them are doctors and farmers and across all industries who have a passion, and they've done well. The thing about it, to take a 181 election means that you've created some sort of success in your life where you have enough income, income that you need, and you have the ability to make an investment. And so, yes, we have physicians who like to dip their toe and have been looking and thinking about investing in film. And this is another great layer to that. If it, my opinion is anyone that invests in a film should 100% also take the 181 election if the film meets the criteria. And so the criteria are a couple of things. The film has to have 1 day of principal photography in the year that you're taking the deduction. It does not have to be completed. The film cannot have been put into service, meaning you cannot fund a film that has already been sold. If it's done complete and it's been released, you can't do it as a re-release or anything like that. 85% of the budget needs to be spent here in the United States. So if you have a little bit of VFX or animation or something that's outsourced outside the US, that's okay. But they do want, if they're going to give this benefit, the US wants you to keep that money here. They want to keep production here and make sure that you're filming, within the United States. And so again, I tell people, go Google the code. It's really simple. It's not too difficult, and it just lays it out there in a couple of pages of here are the criteria for taking 181 election.
It's amazing. Why do you think, because if it's that clear, why do you think it's not more known? I mean, it sounds to me like it's a perfect thing because it's a mix between I'm taking a risk as an investor, which I always do because we're investing in Hollywood, but I'm kind of offsetting that risk through my tax advantage, which, we've done in Germany a lot. We've done in other countries in Europe a lot. It's just not known in the US as much. And I wonder why there isn't more of it. Why don't we hear more of it?
As I dive deeper and deeper into understanding the way our finance in the US works, it's a bit saddening to me personally because there are so many things you can do that are innovative, creative, and allowed. What's sad is you oftentimes have to have very complex CPA and legal teams in order to properly understand or know that you can do this. And so because of that, it kind of segments and reduces the amount of people who understand and can do these deductions, because you have to have a pretty advanced team, which is why we like to share it with people. And I tell you, hey, start with Google, go read about it. And then the other thing is a lot of times tax teams get very comfortable in the way that they manage and handle a return, right? So they know what's tried and true, and they're not really interested in anything outside of the box whatsoever. So many times, we tell people, what we do with 181 is I don't consider it sales. I don't think it's sales of any kind. I think the question is for investors, are you willing to have your team, your tax team, your attorneys, your CPAs, and yourself give enough time to understand what 181 is? And if you're willing to do that, 9 times out of 10, if you're going to invest in film, I feel like it's a great absolute incentive and benefit for you, unless of course you're doing overseas production, which then changes the game.
Yeah, that's a different situation. But frankly, it sounds like the learning curve is potentially made more complicated than it actually needs to be. And I think it's really that. I think that's why it's not more known, because people are like, heard about it, but my tax person doesn't know, my CPA doesn't know, my lawyer doesn't know. And because they don't know, they're like, I don't do that because it's Hollywood. So it's being discarded. Sounds like more or less for the wrong reasons. People just don't want to, investigate it a little more to realize it's actually possible. And there are no. Is there something like you have to be accredited? Is there a minimum of money you have to make as an investor to do it, or is it for anyone?
So again, there's certain questions that I would say it depends on the individual, right? It depends on how you're handling and what your tax picture is and the way that you're doing. This is an expense deduction though. So, it's different than a normal investment. So it's not handled with the same criteria as a traditional investment. And that's what I would say is I completely agree with you, because look, candidly, we're all in the family here, we're all entertainment people. Right. Most CPAs around the world, if you bring up film of any kind, film, theater, television, no matter what you say behind those 3 words, the answer is no. And not no, but absolutely not. That's just the door is closed. Right. And so for us, I mean, that's what we really appreciate and love, is to try to say, hey, give us a minute to understand, because we really think if you do, there's something special here that you can unpack. And as the CPAs and the financial advisors, we think that you're going to be a lot more comfortable with your client taking this investment or participating in this investment. One, because they want to get into entertainment. There's a lot of fun perks. You get all that, you become an executive producer, you get to go on set, you get all the benefits of stepping into our industry, which is enjoyable on its own, right? That's one aspect of it. Then you get the advantage of potential ridiculous upside. Yes, film is always risky, but very few investments have the potential of returns if you have a runaway success in film that we do, for the potential upside. And then finally, it's you with 181, you, the investor, get the benefit from the offset of the investment, which is rare. What other investment can you make into something and get the benefit today? Before waiting on the film coming out or having to do anything else, you're getting a return, you're getting an investment today, and a benefit today. So that's why we really try to help everybody understand and say, listen, if you'll just give us the time, we can unpack this for you. And I tell everybody, start with Google. It's quite simple.
No, for sure. And I do think you're right. There isn't really, I'm trying to think about what kind of expense could I use on my tax return that A, is a good number, because that always helps, right? And B, can I do this, right? I can't even think of one where, the IRS will not put like a huge red flag next to it because there's no code connected to it.
Oh, yeah. So let me give you an example I use all the time. There's another code 179. It's just a general business expense deduction, right? So, but in code 179, every CPA in the world is using that on things like, okay, you have a small business, you own it. We're going to reduce out your, whatever it may be, the amount of paper you bought for the office this year. And we're going to reduce out a portion of your rent for your office space. And we're going to take that all as expense deductions. The thing that's crazy, the code does not name at all those items. So CPAs have to make an assumption and then have to back up the expense deduction that they're taking. Say, well, we bought 50 reams of paper this year, and so we're going to take that as an expense. Well, in an audit, they have to defend that. What is amazing about 181 is the asset class is named specifically in the code. So you start at a great advantage because there is no question of whether feature films qualify, of whether, episodic television qualifies or live theater. It is all black and white right there in the code, which again, in IRS code, that's rare.
That is rare, and you don't have to guess around. And that's where most people get nervous when they have the auditor from the IRS sitting in front of them saying, well, you could see it like this, you could see it like that. Most of us have gone through an IRS audit, and which I've done twice, being from another country and all. But you do also, it helps when the definition is clear. Yes. And you can fight back, which we have to do then when we go through audits as people that are being audited, to say, it does say that, and here's the receipt, and here's what it is. So having a clear definition with 181 is absolutely helpful. I totally agree with you. Now, when investors come to you and work with you, what kind of investment range would you like them, or does it, if you don't want to share, tell me, Jeanette, shut up. But what kind of range would you consider for people to invest with you in, that would make sense? Because you make movies in a certain range. I want to talk about that in a minute, what kind of movies you're making. So the range of investors, because I don't want to have 600 people giving you $10. So
no, absolutely. And so I'm going to give you two answers to this. One answer is for 181 in general. 181 in general does not have a minimum. There is a maximum. So there's two maximums. The general maximum allowed for a single film is $15 million. However, if the film is produced and filmed in a natural disaster designated area that's received federal funding within the last decade, that $15 minimum goes up to $20 million. So most areas qualify for the $20 million cap. So we don't look at a minimum typically, but there is a maximum, which is a great problem to have. I'm sorry, I can only take 15 million of expense deduction for this movie. There is a maximum. Now, our team at Streamline, I do put a minimum just because we have to have the capacity to track our projects. And so I'm not really doing many projects anymore that go under $3 million budgets. meaning my investors are making $3 million or more per year, typically for our team. However, again, general 181, if someone is doing a smaller $500,000 movie, there's no reason to not take in a $500,000 181 deduction. Absolutely. So there's,
Okay, so there is, so for you personally, with the projects that you're working on, it makes no sense to call you up and say, Kevin, I have $100,000 lying around. Would you take him? Because you'll be like, no, we really start at 3 million, which is, it's good to know. It's important.
Yeah. So for our team, yes, for our team, and granted, we do have, we do have some people who are families or our existing business partners, and they say we want to go in together, and it's $1.5 million, and we, we'll work with that and try to find the right project, but we start with the picture of our an investor's tax picture, and then we look at what that is and we pair that with a movie, in the range of movies that we have, at what budgets and what budget range. And so, again, with the metrics, we have a pretty stringent criteria on our side of projects and needing to know. So we require pre-sales, estimates from tier one, sales team, things like that, just to really protect our investors and then protect the projects. And so on average, that comes out about a $3 million budget film.
Right. So when we talk about your specific requirements, so you want to see pre-sales and you want to see projected revenues from a bankable sales agent. Is there a budget range for pre-sales? So if I do a $10 million movie with you, how many pre-sales would you likely want to see?
So I don't have to have any pre-sales if I have strong estimates, right? So it just depends on, we want to know that the film has the ability to make a level of money that we're estimating it's going to make in the cost basis for the investor. So for instance, if I have an amazing script, it's a beautiful script, but it's a first-time writer, right? And we believe, and there's no attachments, but we believe in the project. We may take that on the development side, but in order for me to grab 181, I'm going to have to do something in order to hold estimates strong enough for either, for instance, grabbing a great director, casting, attaching, and that's where we come in. We help with all of this of like, okay, we need to get up to 3 million estimates here. We don't have to sell it, but I need pre-sales estimates of at least 3 million. Therefore, I'm going to have A, B, or C actor attached or equivalent, right? And then we can put this through 181 for our criteria.
Right. So is it 3 million estimates for the $3 million movie, or is it 3 million estimates for the $10 million movie?
It depends. I mean, it could be either. I mean, it on a $10 million movie, we would need to know that total worldwide, both domestic and international, we're going to want equivalent. So I'm going to need, if we're doing 10 million, we're going to need 10 million of estimates from somewhere, right? So that
you want to tell your budget, basically. You're not going to go into a movie where the domestic and the international combined project less
4
than
million, and we're going to put 10 million basis. No, we can't. We won't do that.
That's why I want to clarify.
Yeah, because we want to protect our investors in the event there are ever audits. We want to be ironclad in the estimates that we say, no, this movie absolutely had the ability to make this amount of revenue and this amount of money, and here's the backup to that. And it either did and it exceeded, or it did not, and here's why it did not. But from an IRS perspective, you're still protected if you can show, no, realistically, this is what the projections were, and here's the backup to that.
Right. And so you're basically doing a double security for the investor. You're saying you are covered because you're going to deduct this investment from your taxable income, so you have a tax advantage, but we're not just going to take your money for that. We're also going to make sure it's going to go into a movie that is globally viable, so that the projections that are bankable can cover the investment and the budget that we're making this with. Exactly. So you're giving them extra security, basically, is what you're doing, on top of giving them the tax advantage, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
So when I look at your movies, it seems like you're focusing on, first of all, it looks like you're focusing on globally, commercially viable content. It looks like action, thriller, comedy. Most of them have casts that we've heard of. Is that correct? Am I picking that right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we're genre agnostic. It's like we look at all genres. And I would say even on some of the more creative or art house, you're wanting to go for awards, you're wanting to go, it's not, we know it's not going to be as commercial. We've still done those projects, but we do need typically a lot of times that will start with a cast that's a bankable cast who's passionate about the project, because that gives us the gusto that we need, because at the end of the day, the IRS is going to look at this like a business, and it's an investment. And so if by chance the investor were audited, the question is going to be, was this a business decision that could have made you profit at the end of the road, not something you were just passionate about? Because something you're passionate about does not pass muster with the IRS. It has to make business sense as an investment.
That will explain why you have to have bankable estimates and you want to
Yes.
get market verification through pre-sales.
Yes.
That makes total sense. No, I think that is smart. So you as a producer, and financier, the combination here, what is the range? So it's 3 million on the low. How high do you go when you work on these movies? What is the top
Our
budget that you
budget
think
range
makes sense in the marketplace? Let's put it this way.
Yeah, our budget ranges. It's really wild because, again, you on the smaller side, like I said, most of the stuff is not dipping below 3 anymore. But on the higher side, while we may cap out on the 181 piece, some of the larger movies we do with some of our producing partners that we use time and again, those budgets go up 25, 30, 35, some even 55, million plus.
Wow.
So The Pale Blue Eye is an example with Christian Bale of a pretty large film that we did, where the budget was exceedingly higher than the 181 election, just because of what the cap is. So we really work in a range. But if the 181 money can come in and bring together amazing talent, amazing IP, an amazing story, put that together, the budget becomes irrelevant as long as it's in excess and above the basis we're setting.
So when you look at these estimates, and then that gets me to the question of the industry today, right? I mean, all the shifts and changes and all that nonsense that's going on that we as producers have to adjust to every morning when we have our first cup of coffee, because it changes like in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Talk about how that impacts you in anything you do and decide.
Yeah, it impacts us in a great way. I mean, we started during the pandemic of understanding, okay, what, can we do 181 investments when we don't even know if we can go into production, or how long in the beginning will we ever go back into production? And if so, when? How long? Is it next year? And then that kind of reversed itself. I mean, we found great success during being able to come back, and then also fulfillment, because probably one of the greatest, I don't know the right word, one of the greatest achievements I feel like of my career thus far. There was nothing I think that will be more fulfilling than the fact of being some of the first back into production, and to bring that crazy film family of ours back together for the first time under some crazy circumstances, with creating a bubble and testing like crazy, and not, having food delivered to the door for the people outside the bubble, all of those things we did. But it was one of the most fulfilling things ever to put people back to work, to get paychecks back to crews, to get creative, juices flowing, and creative ideas coming back and coming out of the pandemic. And so all of those things, both good and bad, every single day, as we're shifting and we're moving within the industry right now. Again, we're, as of today, I mean, we're blocked right now because we're fighting for our people. And so how do we, but on the other side of that, people are hurting again. So, paychecks are not flowing. People they're not working on many fronts. And so there's a bottom line to that. And I think that, to me, that's why, personally, there's nothing more fulfilling to me than being on set and physically producing at all. That is the most fulfilling thing I can do for me personally, because it's just, there's an energy about that is unlike anything. However, doing the finance side, understanding 181, doing what we do at the desk, is what puts that into place. And it allows for the right time, as soon as we have the solution from the strike, as soon as we understand how we can go forward time and again, as soon as we knew on the pandemic, we were able to take the finance piece, plug it in, and then begin to create jobs and turn on production. And so that's, yes, we have to ebb and we have to flow every day and understand what new challenges come, and as they come, figure those out.
Right. So when you sell, do you sell more to streamers, studios? Who are your buyers for these movies?
Everyone. I mean, again,
Yeah.
because we have such a range, we have such a range of content that we start early, and so it can be anyone. We work with great sales agents all across the board. And so sometimes we will flip to a studio, sometimes we'll flip to a streamer, sometimes we will completely produce, sell territory by territory for foreign, sell 25 territories and then get a domestic deal, and have 3 pay windows on a domestic deal. And, the first one being a theatrical that we put together, and then to Hulu, and then 24 months later to Netflix. So I guess the answer to that one is D, all of the above.
All of the above. All right. So I'm getting to the last one. Here, we're talking to UCLA students for the most part that are in extension, and they're, enjoying my entertainment finance class. And I deal with them a lot, and they're all of different levels, like KC, who is amazing, who works with you, who introduced us, which I'm so grateful for. They have different levels. And I always tell them, don't waste people's time with stuff. So in order to not waste your time, if they say to you, what should I come to you with? At what time? What would you say to them?
So 2 things. Again, I would go back to 181 is a very special code that anyone can deploy. And so the first thing I would say is understand 181 for your own right. Because even if you're going to go make a $250,000 independent feature, there are ways to benefit when you're raising that $250,000, regardless of whether we're involved in Never Speak or Do. There are great benefits of 181 that can benefit each and every student and each and every filmmaker and entrepreneur. So one, I would say, find out, dig about it, Google and read about it. For us, again, it is, we look at many things. And on the streamline side, like I have mentioned, we're looking for more packages, right? And now we are able to come in and add a benefit many times. So we can come in and we can add talent, we can bring talent to a project, we can bring sales. But it's rare that I'm taking just a cold script and then fighting for the cold script, right? It's typically more packages come to us with, we've got our director, we've got, 1 lead talent or 2 lead talents, or we have everything else but a lead talent, identified. On the streamlined side, unfortunately, because of the size of our company, I can't take anything unsolicited, just due to copyright and legal, issues. We can accept anything through an agent. But I know I also hate that because, you fight and you fight and you fight, to get your work made. On the Thomasville Pictures side, we can accept a little bit more early because we do development on that side. We do take projects. But I would say, we're looking for a little bit more fleshed out than just a script.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's why I always say to people, you're not a producer just by taking the script under your arm and knocking on someone's door. You're basically an extension of the writer. You need to do the producing job, which has to do with find some money, find some talent, and then take that script somewhere.
Yes.
So I agree with you on this. We do it the same way, but it's always nice to hear, from people that not just me saying it counts, someone else saying it, it solidifies me a little better. Thank you. So any advice to end this, and thank you so much for doing this, Ryan, this is fantastic. Any advice that you have for people that are in the industry right now as content creators, let's say?
Yeah, I think that I would say to everybody, there is nothing more fulfilling in our industry when you complete a project and you get that project to the finish line. However, it's a hell of a ride, and it's going to be miserable. It's going to hurt really bad, and it's going to be really hard. And so, I tell people, determination and the time that you're willing to give is the difference between success and failure. And you have to keep on. You have to keep on, and you have to keep on, because I believe 95% of failure is the person stopped right before the finish line, and you're not going to see the finish line often. And so it might be right there. But if you actually want to do this, you're going to have to push like crazy. And you're going to have to knock on more doors and take more meetings and not give up and not give in and move the meeting 900 times. One of the reasons I moved from Nashville to LA is I was trying, I'd come to LA and I'd set meetings and I'd come for a week. And then my biggest meeting would get pushed to the following week. And then I'd wait and I'd stay here 2 weeks. And then that an hour before the meeting, it'd get pushed again. And the bigger the meeting, the more times it's going to move, is kind of the adage. And then the last piece is, I believe it's all about relationships. Meet people and take care of people and be kind to people, because you never know. The people that you met 10 years ago, the people that I met when I first moved out here are running things now. And, and so we've come up together, and I think that everything is about relationships and how you treat people.
Couldn't agree more, honestly. Well, thank you so very much for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to take more of your time. Well, thank you, Ryan. You go make some fantastic more movies, because we love them all. Most of them I've seen, and they're amazing.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I will send you the recording of this.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.